It is 6:30. We do have a quorum. We'll call our work session for March 21st, 2022 to order. Now is the public forum. Individuals may address the City Council about items on the agenda or not included on the agenda. Speakers are required to state their name and address for the council record and limit the remarks to 3 minutes or less. Speakers are requested to frame their comments around items that fall within the authority of the City Council. Generally, the City Council will not take official action on the items discussed at this time, but may place the item on file, take the matter under advisement, refer the matter to staff or a committee for a future report, or direct the matter to be placed on an upcoming agenda. Would anyone like to speak?
Hi, my name is Regan Bird, and I live at 17687 Gale Drive, and I'm talking about the project on Gale Drive. That new house, they said the hookup has to be within 500 feet to be required to hook up. And we had talked over the assessments we had got, and there's like 5 houses between that house and Riverwood, and you're charging us almost 900 feet of service. So wouldn't he be outside of required, and can he get his own system?
Greg?
Yeah, so it's 500 feet within as the crow flies. So he is within that 500-foot distance to that area. And the 900 feet that you're probably referring to is the accessible footage. So if you have a pie-shaped lot, there's a calculation to take the average length and width and area of it to determine the front footage of the lot.
Okay. And then, so the services, what do they cost per month?
For sewer and water services?
Or just the sewer?
Or do you know that?
$30 per month.
I think it's right around $30 a month.
For the consumption, and then the base charge is
If you don't have
Because you don't have to hook up to the water, correct?
Right, and you don't have to hook up to sewer right now either. Only
right.
if your septic fails.
Correct.
Right.
So you would not be required to hook up to either of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Is this the time for the Gale Drive project, or are you guys not?
Well, I believe we already had a public hearing, so the time to speak to it would be now during the public forum.
My name is Matt Sunder. I live on 17699 Gale Drive. I just have a question in regards to the timing of the project and all the other neighborhoods out in that area. Why are we 20 years into the annexation project when we're finally getting done? Why and being assessed at all these high-end rates? The Edgewood project, which was done on 4 years ago, the stubbing costs were totaling something like $1,400 less to be put in, and the cost for everything is so much more now than what it was at that time. I know when we built, or not when we built, but when we bought our house, we were told that we were not allowed to go on city water because we didn't have the required personnel to accept the project, and now one person is able to accept it on all of our behalfs. I just don't understand, number one, the pricing, and number two, how the process has changed.
So the assessment rates are based off of the unit prices that we get for construction, so the actual contract prices that we get. We take last year's to base the preliminary ones. That's what you've seen in the mail. And then when we get the final one, which comes in September, that's based off the actual contract price that we see. These rates are consistent with what we've seen last year for our construction project. I suspect that these rates that our construction costs are going to be more than what those preliminary numbers are. In the past, the council has kept those. I suspect that's going to be the case as well this time. But if the bid prices that come in lower, those go down. But if they go up, there's the potential for them to go up. But like I said, in the past, the council has kept them all the same.
Okay, so that doesn't actually answer the other question that I proposed or positioned as far as what is actually reasonable? I mean, because the project was, the annexation project was put in, and in the annexation, it says that it will be done in a reasonable amount of time. How is 20 years a reasonable amount of time? I mean, in the last meeting that we had on this, you had stated that the property owners, if we don't put it in and we try to sell, we would have to negotiate with the future buyers. We didn't have that opportunity when we bought the house because it wasn't actually done. And that was more than 10 years after the annexation project took place. How exactly is this fair to all of us? I mean, you're charging us exorbitant rates based off of today's values when you guys knew 20 years ago that you guys were going to be doing this.
So that agreement, like you mentioned, was done in 2003, and it did indicate in there that it goes to 2015. So we don't go to an area and say, we're going to put in a sewer and water unless we have a petition for it. There's areas, I think 3 areas left with sewer and water. We don't have petitions for them yet, so they don't have sewer and water. Gale Drive is one of them. The remainder of Edgewood is one of them. We don't have a petition for that. Ryan has a section that does not have sewer and water in it as well. Again, we don't have a petition. And I think there's one on DeRozier that does not have sewer and water on it as well.
DeRozier, Smith doesn't.
Smith doesn't. So, I mean, there's a couple of them out there that, even though they were annexed, part of that annexation back in 2003, which took full effect in 2015, that don't have sewer and water, but the petition, we've never received a petition. The residents at the time haven't requested it. In this case, we did get a petition for it, for a new house that is being built over there, and that's what started the project.
Okay. Either way, I'm just extremely frustrated about the pricing that we're being charged, especially that we've been paying the city taxes, the higher city taxes because we've been annexed in, and when individuals have contacted, we've been told no because we don't have the proper quorum. It's just ridiculous.
Would anyone else like to speak? Please.
My name is Jamie Sunder, 17699 Gale Drive. The question I have is, the day after our last meeting with you guys, I had somebody named Oliver from the city call me and say that he needed to come out and check out my drain field and my septic system that is in our front yard. Because my concern was that if they dig through, they're digging through where my drain field possibly is and it's going to be damaged, plus my septic system. So he came out, he came and told my husband that he was there. He tried to convince him that this project will be just fine, but he didn't take any measurements. He didn't ask where our drain field was. He didn't ask where our septic system was. He didn't do anything but stand there and tell my husband that it's okay, you'll be fine. My concern is if they damage my septic system or my drain field when they're digging, we're responsible for that. And then we're forced to hook up to city sewer and water, which is an extra amount of money. So on top of that already huge fee, we're going to have to factor in them tearing through our yard, then also running the line to the house, which I've already gotten a quote, and it says it's like $22,000. So on top of the already huge fee of $18,000 plus $22,000, I just feel like if they damage our system in the process, what are our rights? Because then we're forced to go on.
So I did ask Oliver to get in touch with you because you did have those concerns at the public hearing in regards to the septic system and the drain field. What he told me, obviously I wasn't there, but what he told me is he could see where the cleanouts were for the septic tank as well as the drain field, and that the drain field was considerably farther back than the right-of-way. And so he said it's outside the right-of-way. There's no concern in terms of it being damaged just because of how far out of the right-of-way is. We stop our construction at the right-of-way, so there wouldn't be the chance or the potential for that being damaged.
Okay, I would like to see that like on paper because, I mean, like I said, if it is damaged in the process, who's responsible for that? Because that puts us in a really bad place.
True, so that would be the contractor in that regard. So if it's outside the right-of-way and it's damaged, then the contractor damaged it. They went beyond the area that they're supposed to be doing the work in, and they would be responsible for that. We do get insurance, we do get performance bonds from the contractor when it is let for those specific reasons.
So if there's any damage to our property, we just have to talk to the contractor?
If it's outside the right-of-way, yes. So like, we've talked about the sprinkler systems and stuff like that, that obviously is not something that they would be responsible for.
Yeah.
But septic systems, then yes, that would be, you'd let us know so that we can coordinate with them, but the contractor would be responsible for that.
And yet we're still going to be penalized by having to go on city water and sewer, is that correct?
We would cross that bridge when we get there. I don't anticipate that being impacted, just because if we know where it's at, we know where to stay away from it. After the discussions that Oliver had and saw out there, we're not going to impact it, I know that.
Okay. I would just like to state for the record that I'm still opposed.
Yep.
Would anyone else like to speak? If no one else would like to speak, bill discussion. Does anyone have any questions with the bills for this evening?
I have a question, and it's not something I saw in the bills, it's just something that I have never seen in the bills, and I'm wondering how it gets paid. Being a business owner, I have employees, and I have to pay a whole bunch of fees to the state for having those employees. How is that listed in the bills, or where does that come out of?
Payroll is outside of the bills.
Okay.
So we do the payroll, but the payroll itself is not reflected in here.
Okay.
You know, we paid, the FICA, the Medicare, the retirement, all of those kinds of things. The only thing that shows in here as an expense to the city is the city's contribution to health insurance and the city's contribution to life insurance and the HSA deductible part.
Okay.
So,
So
but
all the
otherwise,
rest of
payroll
that
is
is-
handled outside of the bills.
Okay, so when the payroll is listed, that's part of what the payroll is? Well, payroll's not listed in here, but, I'm sorry,
So when the payroll is listed,
so it's all in the payroll, so,
yes, all the expenses, the FICA med retirement, all of that is in the payroll.
okay.
And that's reflected when you
Workman's
get your
comp,
monthly,
all of it? Workman's comp is in there too?
yes. Well, the workman's
Or
comp,
separate.
that's, comes through your bills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's showed, but we only pay that once a year.
And is it listed as workman's comp?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yep, so that's in there as well.
Yeah, every department has with employees has a workman's comp line item that's separate from the other payroll, regular payroll and benefits line
What time
items.
of year does that come out?
The premium, initial premium is due is typically in July, and then they come and do our audited premium, and that's typically in September.
Okay.
So there can be, depending if we have a refund or have to pay extra, that can go either way in September. But those numbers all are reflected in the monthly report that I send you.
Yeah.
So there's a payroll line item in each department, an employee benefits item, which would include the city's contribution to FICA, Medicare, para, life insurance, health insurance is all there, and then work comp is a separate line item on that report as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the bills? A consent agenda item discussion, but I do want to point out there needs to be one addition on the golf course returning employees. Austin Udy would be pay grade 3, step 2, needs to be added on to that list. Any questions with consent agenda items? Council information only items, housing study update, Community Partners Research Incorporated. Scott.
Good evening, members of the City Council. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm Scott Knudsen with Community Partners Research, and I'm here to talk about the update to the Little Falls Housing Study Project. If I could jump to the next slide. Steve Research also worked on this project with me, but I was the lead on this project for writing and doing most of the research. We We had also done your project back in about 2011, which is the original housing study, and this was an update of that document. Community Partners Research is a Minnesota-based company, works with cities, counties, housing redevelopment authorities, nonprofit groups, private developers on these types of housing research projects. We can jump to the next. For your update, we took a look at a lot of different pieces of information. But in general, we looked at some demographic and statistical sources of data, including the 2020 census, which was released about the time we started on the project, at least the initial release. We looked at local data sources, we did some local interviews, we did an extensive telephone survey of larger rental properties in the community, talking to property owners and managers. We looked at city and county records, things like building permit reports, sales activity, those types of things. And we also did a condition analysis in a defined neighborhood within your community, the same neighborhood we looked at about 10 years ago, and updated that information and housing conditions with some of your older housing stock. Keep going. The study itself is laid out into a number of different individual sections. There's a short introduction, there's a section on demographic and projection data, kind of population and household information. A section we call existing housing data, where we look at things like building permits, sales activity, lot availability, age of housing, all those types of things about your local housing stock. The rental housing inventory is composed of the information we collected from that telephone survey of larger rental properties, and we break out that information by within different rental segments in your community. A special section on specialized senior housing with services, the things that you might be familiar with, like assisted living, skilled nursing homes, those that provide a level of care for seniors with their housing. We provided a section on our demand calculations for rental housing, since we know your community was particularly interested in some additional rental projects. A section on employment and economic trends, looking at unemployment rates, information on wages, also some community information in that section. And then finally, our extensive findings and recommendations section, where we updated the information again and talked about the new things that we had found in 2021 and 2022. Next one. I would like to just talk about a few highlights from each of these sections, starting with the demographic highlights. Little Falls has continued to grow, adding both population and households. However, we did recognize that some of this growth in the last decade and in prior decades was due to annexation. So we did our best to try and filter out some of the annexation growth versus the natural growth of population and households, and the organic growth adding households to the community. To help us analyze that, we took a look at a market area designation around the community that involved some of the rural townships, small cities. Because the annexation activity has also happened within those jurisdictions, by looking at that market area, we could, in fact, eliminate any kind of impact from annexation from our numbers. Next. There is a map that shows the market area. You know, it's maybe a 6 to 10 mile radius around the community with Little Falls in the center. That map is in the document. Next one. Just again, some of the demographic highlights. Little Falls has continued to add population, as I said. After adjusting for what we saw as annexation activity, we believe that the city has been averaging 30 or more additional residents per year on average over the prior decade. We compared 2020 and 2010, and what we were seeing is in a typical year adding 30 or more new residents to the community, again, above and beyond any kind of annexation scheme. The city has also been adding households since 2010. We believe that it was about 20 households per year on average that were added, again, excluding annexation. That additional household growth in your community creates direct demand for housing availability. In order to add those households, you need housing units for them to be a household. Next. And it's important to state that even though we looked at growth for that entire market area, the city of Little Falls itself is really the primary driver of growth within that market area aggregation. There was a small amount of growth that may have occurred outside the city limits, but again, Little Falls accounts for most of it in the immediate area. We also took a look at this document, age-based information, both estimates and projections. Generally speaking, the market area over the last 10 to 12 years has been adding households and population age 55 and older. And in general terms, possibly losing households in population age 54 and younger. Growth has been particularly strong in the age groups between 65 and 74 years old. A lot of this has to do with the fact that there's that large baby boom generation, of which I am a member, that is aging through the aging cycle. And in the last 10 years, a lot of the baby boomers moved into the 60s and early 70s. So a lot of this growth you're seeing in these older age ranges is a direct result of existing residents aging in place in your community. That can also reflect people moving into the area, relocating into the community over time. Projections that we look at are oftentimes based on past patterns. And so, again, with consistent growth in the past for Little Falls, the best projections that we had available to us indicated the city would continue to grow, and we used a number of about 28 households per year on average over the next 5 years as an achievable growth range. Again, looking backwards, the city has probably been doing about an average of 20 households per year. This is up somewhat. It wouldn't surprise me, however, if some of the new housing development activities do occur and are successful, that the city would actually grow at a faster rate than 28 households per year. But that seems like a reasonable projection to work with in this document. Again, the age-based projections to the year 2026 continue to show an increasing number of households at 65 and older, again, as those baby boomers move through. Projections would indicate a smaller number of households, age 64 and younger, but again, it's important to note that those are informed predictions of what may happen. Again, to the extent that the city has desirable housing options and grows faster than we had maybe anticipated, as younger workers, that type of thing, it's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility that younger households will be added in number as well. Next. Looking at the income and housing cost highlights, we were using information from the 2019 American Community Survey. We saw a city midpoint, a median income for all households at right around $40,000 in 2019. For families now, and families that have 2 or more related individuals living in a household, the median income was about $63,400. So as a result, approximately half of your households in the city can afford $1,000 or more per month for housing, and approximately half can afford $1,000 or less. Now, I did take a look. The 2020 information came out in the American Community Survey within the last week. I took a look at those numbers, and they really haven't changed substantially. The city's median in 2020 in the American Community Survey was right around $40,000 still per household. Well, we do have those kinds of numbers, $63,400 per family median, $40,000 per household median. It is important to note that there are discrepancies based on housing occupancy tenure. People that own their housing tend to have incomes above these thresholds I've just talked about, while renters tend to be below. And so in 2019, the median income, the midpoint income for all renters in your community was about $26,250, substantially below the median for all households. So renters tend to have lower incomes, and many of the renters in your community would need a unit price at, say, $660 or less per month to avoid any kind of housing cost burden. Certainly, a number of renters need a rental unit price below $700 to be considered at all affordable. So with that information about renter households, it's not surprising that we saw that about 41% of all renter households in your community had a housing cost burden in 2019. So again, those about 41% of renter households were paying 30% or more of their income for housing. When you got into the home ownership side, only about 17% of all homeowners were in that position of paying 30% or more of their income for housing. Part of the income, or part of the equation for housing cost burden is based on income. Part of it is also, however, based on rent. According to the American Community Survey, the estimated median gross rent now for all rental units, the midpoint rent in the community in 2019 was right around $800, $799. For just 2 bedrooms, which are fairly common in the rental market, it was about $708. I would say that those numbers are probably somewhat dated. We do suspect the rents have been increasing since that time. Our rental survey was finding for daily rent ranging from about $680 to a little over $1,000 for 2-bedroom options. So I would guess that those American Community Survey numbers have crept upwards due in part to demand for rental housing. Next. Existing home values in the community, again, I do suspect we had a little bit of a data lag here. We were seeing a median estimated sale price in the past year of about $160,000, but do realize we grabbed our sales sample before 2021 was over, and I would guess that with upward price pressure and demand for single-family houses, existing homes, it would not surprise me at all if those prices went up in the latter part of the year, part of which we did not capture in our sales sample. We do know that from other communities, other markets, there's been a very, very strong demand for existing homes, and especially good quality, affordable existing homes. Housing construction, looking now at some of the existing housing or more existing housing highlights, housing construction has been limited in many recent years. The last time the city had a net gain of more than 20 housing units through new construction in a single year had been 2015. And that's when a larger rental project, Evergreen Terrace, had been constructed. So we know you've been adding households, but you haven't necessarily in many years been adding a lot of housing units, which has created a tightness in the market, shortage of supply. And with that, people have had to find other types of housing to live in, units that may have previously been vacant, some older housing, that type of thing. We know that there's a very low vacancy rate in rental housing, and we do know that there's a limited supply of existing houses available for sale in the community. More existing housing highlights here. We have not received the information from the 2020 census yet. That should be out fairly soon, but it's not quite here. So we were left to estimate rental occupancy tenure. We believe, based on the information that we can see, that your rental rate has probably moved above 40% in 2021, 2022. Again, we'll be able to test that when the census does finally release information from the 2020 count. As far as housing age is concerned, the estimated median year of construction for both owner and rental housing in your community dates to the early 1970s. So about half or more of rental units and owner occupancy units are approximately 50 or more years old. So in general, there's a fair amount of older housing in your community. We also looked at things like building capacity or lot capacity. We found that the city does have attractive lot options, and they are suitable for near-term construction. However, if you start achieving a higher level of new home construction, there will be some additional lots needed, and there may be additional lots needed for things like attached units like twin homes or townhouses going forward. Next. Rental market conditions, now jumping to that rental survey that we did, we found an extremely low vacancy rate in existing rental housing. We generally surveyed the larger multifamily complexes and rental property managers that might have had larger portfolios. There was also, in addition to a very low vacancy rate, there was evidence of unmet demand. I mean, if you talk to a rental property owner or manager and they said they advertised a vacancy that came up at one of their buildings, they received multiple phone calls. So there was unmet demand for affordable and attractive rental housing. The city does have some moderate rent housing that was created through the federal low-income housing tax credit program, that's referred to as workforce housing. Within that segment, there are income restrictions and there are occupancy restrictions. This segment of the market, serving moderate income renters, had no vacancies, and again, there was evidence of pent-up demand within that segment. Next. The city also has a supply of very affordable subsidized housing, kind of the low-income housing where rent is based on household income. Those units are available for both general occupancy and designated for senior and or disabled tenant occupancy. However, it is important to note that in your community, most of those subsidized units have only one bedroom. They're originally designed for senior and or disabled tenants with one bedroom. You have a smaller supply of family-oriented subsidized housing. Overall, occupancy rates were generally high in the subsidized segment, although there were some one-bedroom vacancies available. However, you got into, again, subsidized units for families with 2 or more bedrooms with a very high rate of occupancy and some evidence of unmet demand. Your community also has rent assistance vouchers through the county HRA. Those vouchers are out there to help lower income people rent existing housing. The voucher goes with the family. However, a number of those vouchers were unused at the time that we were doing our research, in part because of, again, the low vacancy rate. Households were being issued a voucher, but they were not able to find a unit that they could rent and move into to use that voucher. And as a result, those vouchers were being forfeited, again, due to low vacancy rates, generally speaking, in the rental market. The city also has a wide array of options for seniors needing some level of care with their housing. Occupancy rates were generally high, although there was some capacity available here at times in certain projects. It's extremely important to note that the COVID pandemic has impacted senior-oriented housing probably the most. And as a result, it's a little hard to evaluate this segment of the market because there may be some hesitancy on the part of some people to move into counterfeit senior settings, especially when the pandemic was running at a higher rate. Your community has housing with light services where people can get like a new meal, light housekeeping, maybe assistance with laundry, but basically light services. You have assisted living with higher levels of care, 24 hours of staffing, assistance or availability of skilled nursing staff. You have advanced memory care, people that need dementia or Alzheimer's care, again, a very high level of care, very specialized form of housing, and you have skilled nursing homes in the community. Next. I don't talk about some other things in here, like some of the employment section that's in this, that talks about unemployment rates, that talks about community patterns, but that isn't the document. But for sake of time, we need to kind of jump to the findings and recommendations to just give you a few overviews here. We looked at future housing demand generators, primarily relying on that future household growth, anticipating households being added to the community. Pent-up demand, as we talked about, especially with the rental, where it seems like there's extremely low vacancy rates and unmet demand for rental housing. We also looked at things like age-based housing preferences. With that growing population and number of households age 65 and older, you start to see people's housing preferences change as they age. A couple that may have been retired that wanted to have a single-family house in the past, maybe looking to downsize, look for a lower maintenance option going forward, and that can create demand for housing. Our 5-year, just in terms of general housing goals, our 5-year production goal or target for the city was about 365 rental units spread across an array of different rental market segments, and a 5-year production goal of up to 120 owner occupancy houses, primarily in detached single-family houses, but also with some attached single-family like homes and townhomes. Now, maybe in a perfect world, you'd like to see a little bit better balance between that. We're heavily weighted towards rental housing in these recommendations. But part of that is just a recognition of kind of current market conditions. It's become extremely difficult to build single-family homes that people consider affordable. Part of that's due to the pandemic and some of the supply chain issues, material shortages. Part of it's due to labor costs and those types of things. I don't mean to imply that creating rental housing is inexpensive either. Generally speaking, larger multifamily projects have been more successful in a lot of communities. If construction costs are lowered, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that owner occupancy total go up a little bit, but these were the general numbers that we were working with some of our specific recommendations. Next. Helping to some of those specific recommendations, we see demand potential for 160 to 170 conventional market rate rental housing units over our 5-year projection period. That probably plays out to be, say, like 3, possibly 4 phased projects over that 5 years, 40, 50 unit projects. Might be something that you would see advance. It's certainly something that's talked about in your community and that we've seen in other similar types of communities. Number 2, we would also, however, promote the development conversion of at least 20 to 30 units that are more affordable. Generally speaking, in that market rate recommendation, number 1, we're anticipating that 2-bedroom units will have a gross rent above $1,000 a month. Then, a lot of your renter households can't afford that, and in number 2, what we're talking about is trying to create some more affordable market rate units, say maybe in the $800 to $950 range for, say, 2 bedrooms. That may be difficult to achieve through new construction, but possibly it can be done through building conversions, say utilizing unused space above downtown buildings, other kinds of buildings that can be converted to rental housing, or it may take some kind of development subsidies to bring down the cost of some units. And again, if you can create more than 20 or 30, that would be great, but at least to have a target to help serve some of those more moderate income renters. Number 3, promote the development of additional tax credit, moderate rent, income units, 55 to 70 units over the projection period. Again, these would have income and occupancy restrictions, but they are moderate rent units. They are not deemed subsidy units and projects that could be created through the low-income housing tax credit program. Possibly some other programs the state of Minnesota may be considering through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency to try and promote workforce housing. Number 4, develop 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom general occupancy subsidized rental units as resources allow. Again, the federal government has not really been involved in subsidized housing in many, many years, but to the extent you could add to your supply of deep subsidy housing for very low-income families, generally targeting, again, families needing 2 or more bedrooms, that would be encouraged. Next. Promote some expansion of specialized senior housing. We were talking about 14 to 24 additional light services units, kind of that senior moving in that doesn't need a lot of services right off the get-go, but maybe looking for a unit that allows them to age in place. That should say those units should be created by 2026, not 2024. That was a typo on my part. Sorry about that. Number 6, monitor demand for additional assisted living units and some, again, moderate expansion of those units by 2026. If some of the projections hold true on the expansion of senior households, and especially older senior households that gravitate towards assisted living. Again, that may be a recommendation that needs to be monitored to see how some of these projects come out of the COVID pandemic and whether stabilized occupancy is again achieved. Potential demand number 7 for 24 to 30 additional memory care rooms, beds through 2026. We saw that as an area of especially tight supply. And again, people that need advanced memory care really can't afford to wait to move. And those units are something that could be created in the near future. Next. Jumping to some of the home ownership recommendations, we would recommend that the city monitor the residential lot supply and promote additional development as necessary to meet demand. Again, based on kind of annual pickup of those lots. No one likes to have a subdivision out there with a big inventory of unsold lots, so generally speaking, developers are pretty savvy and builders are pretty savvy about bringing in increments of lots to kind of meet near-term demand. And just monitoring that to make sure that that lot ability lot supply remains available going forward so that it doesn't hinder new home construction. We were seeing number 9, demand for approximately 10 to 12 more moderately priced homes constructed annually in the community. That would be a particular strength of home building in your community. However, even since we started this project, what might be defined as moderately priced has probably gone up in price. Many people wouldn't consider that moderate anymore, but again, given the nature of new construction prices, we're probably talking units or houses that are up to, say, $425,000 within this price range, ideally some in lower price ranges. Promote the construction of 2 to 4 affordable or entry-level homes per year. Again, we're probably talking about houses here that may go up as high as $250,000 or $275,000. In a perfect world, once upon a time, it was possible to build entry-level homes for less. But again, talking to builders, it's extremely difficult to build those. Because of those prices for those types of homes, the demand will be somewhat suppressed. Again, a lot of the entry-level buyers look for existing older homes that they can buy, but we still see some demand for some entry-level homes being built annually. We also see some demand within the higher price segment, generally, let's say like $450,000 or more, 4 to 5 homes annually. It is important to note, though, like in your community, if someone is looking at a higher price, high amenity home, they may also look at options that exist outside the city limits, some attractive rural locations and that type of thing. So there is some competition for these higher price, higher amenity homes. Number 12, we do expect single-family housing, attached single-family housing should gain market share going forward. Twin homes, townhomes would be well suited to the aging population, the growing number of households 65 and older. That segment of the market, again, has been somewhat suppressed in the recent past, but we would expect to see that it gain additional market share over the 5-year projection period. Number 13, we would encourage the city to promote affordable housing. using affordable home ownership programs, things like down payment assistance, first-time homebuyer mortgages, those types of things, to the extent they can be offered oftentimes through a nonprofit or housing agencies, they can help move some of those marginal buyers towards home ownership and move the people from rental to home ownership going forward. Next. Promote, as far as rehabilitation and preservation recommendations, we certainly would promote ongoing rental housing rehabilitation, number 14, and ongoing owner occupancy housing rehabilitation. Again, as I talked about earlier, as much as half of your housing stock may be 50 years old or older, there's nothing wrong with that housing if it's maintained. Older housing, especially older rental housing, does oftentimes take more care in terms of maintenance and fix up and repair to make it desirable housing. You've been involved in things in the past with small cities grants, and certainly continuing those activities going forward would be important. We did give you some updated information in this document about housing conditions in one of your old neighborhoods. Number 16, promote mobile home improvement programs. We also know you have a fairly large stock of mobile homes in the community. Some of those are in disrepair. It is oftentimes hard to do much with mobile homes in terms of repairing them. Oftentimes it's the replacement of the unit, but certainly monitoring that segment of the market is important as well. I think, is there one more slide, I believe? And finally, a couple more preservation recommendations. Acquire and develop dilapidated structures. There's not a lot of dilapidated structures in your community, but certainly there are some substandard buildings. Acquiring those and removing those, possibly using the lots for redevelopment, affordable housing, say a Habitat for Humanity house, those types of things. I think if I remember correctly, we identified as many as 8 houses in the older neighborhood that we surveyed that, in our opinion, may be candidates for demolition and clearance. And then finally, consider the development of a targeted neighborhood revitalization program. Again, if you can have some impact for things like the small cities grant, you can possibly do a concentrated program over a couple of years to improve conditions and quality of older housing stock. And I think with that, that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's any particular questions or discussions people want to have.
Any questions?
Council President, if I had a meeting with Scott when we originally looked at the draft, and the one, one of the most shocking numbers that came up to me was the median household income for the renter population being at 26,000. I suspect one of the reasons is that we don't have a high volume of market rate rentals in our community. I think when you compare the total number of rental units and look at the market rates versus the affordable ones, are probably higher into the more affordable, which would lead me to believe that kind of pushes the income base there down. So I don't want that to, we discussed that a little bit, and I didn't want that to be kind of looked at as a that we're not a great market for market rate apartment complexes. Obviously, you've seen the recommendations farther along in the presentation that we are recommending, or they are recommending a vast number of market rate units added in the next 5 years relative to all of the units there. So I just wanted that to be noted, because to me it was one of the most kind of eye-opening statistical figures that I had seen in the document, but the rest of it, confirmed a lot of the things that we're hearing. And then I just want to share again, just this last week, I had a phone call from an individual that is desperately looking to move into the community and wants a market rate house or apartment unit, and there's nothing to be had. There just isn't anything available for them. They're on every waiting list and is asking, like, when is something going to be built? So it might be touched on in the next segment.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to connect by Zoom. It wouldn't have been very practical for me to be able to make your meeting, but I really appreciate your willingness to let me come into the meeting in this way. Are there any other questions? I couldn't quite hear.
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, then, thank you very much. again, thank John for your involvement in this project.
Thank you, Scott.
Have a good evening.
I'm going to sign off.
That would be okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Community Asset Development Group update. John?
Thank you, Council President. Both the mayor and I were able to meet with Bob Repke and Mike Melton from Community Asset Development Group last week, just again confirming with them their interest in getting their project constructed. They are very interested. Their investors are interested, but as with anything in what we've experienced, costs have been going up in inflation, and they shared with us that their project is no different. Part of the reason it was postponed was lumber costs. At that time, there was kind of a market bubble on lumber, and they were hoping that could be corrected, but as that corrected, everything else kind of started incrementally increasing. They are still very interested and shared with us that, their investors are willing to fund part of that gap at this time, and we are going to continue looking for some additional resources outside of TIF to help with this project. I think it is a good candidate after the legislative update from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities that there actively are a number of House bills and Senate bills that are addressing some of these issues, especially in Greater Minnesota, where what we're seeing is that construction cost, just exceeding what the rental rates can support, and what truly is market and affordable within communities like ours, and the cost to get those units built. But obviously, having heard this presentation, there's a very high demand on housing, and I think it will serve our community in a very good way if we can, actively push towards things being developed. Lori as well has had calls from another developer looking at doing something around a multifamily unit complex in town as well.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I could just add, I understand the increased costs, believe me, because I'm seeing them myself. And the other thing is, I think with this study that we just had, that it identifies what we expected and pretty much knew the need for housing. So I would hope that if we can't find anything, John, as far as support for them with any grants or anything like that, I would hope that we could re-engage with TIF, because we need this badly, and I was hoping they'd get started this spring, and now it's delayed a little bit, so that's all I have.
Other items, I'm going to start with Greg. He has something from the airport.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just recently notified that, well, I'll back up. If you recall, we've been working on the Crosswind runway for quite some time. Early 70s is when we first started that, and actively pursuing this particular one for probably about 15 years now. I was just notified by the Minnesota Council of Airports that the Crosswind runway that we just recently completed was selected as the Minnesota's Project of the Year for 2021. So we will be getting an award for that, and all of the hard work for the Airport Commission finally paid off to be able to get that constructed, and we are the Project of the Year for 2021.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Any other items that anyone else has?
Council President, if I may, I'll share it here and again in the regular session, but as you know, if, having read my message to you, but we have been awarded in the federal appropriations bill that was recently passed by the House and Senate, $1.5 million to construct a child care facility in our community. So when I get further details about what the various requirements will be, because I'm sure with federal money there will be plenty of requirements, we will be bringing that up for discussion on how to best utilize that. I think based on a lot of the history and learning and connection to the stakeholders around this issue, Carol Anderson and I would tell you, and everybody in multiple meetings, that one of the biggest things that we could do to create more childcare slots was to construct a facility and provide it basically at no cost to operators for a period of time to help them get established. And, you know, that certainly is still true. I expect, though, that there's additional needs as everything else has continued, we've seen continue to increase in cost. So it's great. It's wonderful that we got this, and it's a huge testimony and support that we have in the relationships that we have with our elected officials. You know, it's unfortunate that is going to be changed for us, being moved to a different congressional district, but we will work hard as we did before to establish those relationships and, you know, and bring these things that are needed to our community to make it better. I mean, it's not that we could really, I feel we could have done a facility like this in $1.5 million and to have the federal support and the support of our elected officials to do that is really tremendous, and we're going to make a positive impact in this after many years of working on it.
I got a question regarding that, and maybe this has already been taken care of, but from the sound of things, maybe we should get a resolution before the council to express the gratitude to Congressman Stauber's office for help making that happen.
And Senator Smith especially as well, and Senator Klobuchar, all three of them contacted me. All three of them requested that we put in applications through their various office. They all signed on and supported our plans, because there were numerous, literally hundreds of them submitted across the state. So they, you know, kind of had some limitations into what they totally were able to agree and come together and move forward and advocate for. So yes, all three of them, especially Representative Stauber, who was really the initiator to that, coming to Little Falls, meeting with the mayor and I and Greg about needs that we had in the community, and encourage us to choose that child care project, because he thought it was going to be the one that was most supported around in their world.
Thank you for your work on that. And Greg as well. Any other items? Any constituent messages?
Council President, I have a constituent who has said that after reading the article in the paper about the community center, his understanding was that it was going to be mostly used by the school. And I assured him that that was not the case, but I'm wondering, John, if you would be able to provide a list of talking points for council members, so that when we get questions like this, that we would be able to, you know, give them a real solid list of things that it will be used for, not by the school.
Mr. President, if I could just briefly add, and I don't want us to start making points because we'll be here till 8 o'clock, but one thing that is part of an unknown is the fact that allowing the high school to do some things there also opens up other gymnasiums for whether it's youth or community services for volleyball, basketball, and all kinds of things. So it may not all be there, but there's still going to be a lot of opportunities.
Yes, I think a critical element in all of this is based on the location, which has been, we've discussed and vetted about, you know, in coming up with this with, you know, the architect team, Contegrity, people from the school district, stakeholders within our community. That location is such an ideal location to site this, and it's the school's land. So we have to bring them to the table in order to, you know, get that agreement and partnership and something developed. However, in the end, this will always be a city-owned and operated facility. So we still will have, you know, direction and I don't want to say, in control truly about what it is and activities that go on there. I've, had conversations, I've seen examples of these facilities, and those partnerships and relationships are strongly important, but in the end, the ones that are really successful and really community-oriented are still owned by the city and operated by the city. And seeing that success, I wouldn't expect us to do anything different, but we want the school to be a partner because we want to utilize their land, and we want to support them in making sure that the land we are using has its impact, we know, to the environmental classroom area. We've discussed that on numerous occasions, and we brought in the very key stakeholders that are impacted by this, and even the ones that developed it over a long period of time. And we've come up with a concept, an idea, and solution that can address those concerns. So yes, we will put together talking points. We will be scheduling, public engagement sessions on the project. I spoke with Zach. We had a long conversation. There'll be another section of article to come out and explain what I explained with him on just how did we get here. And, if there are any questions, concerns that you're getting from residents, please don't hesitate to call us. And myself in particular, or if they're, emails, like forward those messages to us. We can explain what those factual details are around this project. And, it's not so that, people have that understanding, and, we're transparent about how did we get here and what is this project ultimately going to look like. We're still in concept phase. We're not to firm, in pen finalized details, but we know based on what the region has for assets and what would really be supported and strongly utilized, that what you saw in the presentation 2 weeks ago is something that I think would really be a benefit to our community.
Hey, John, is there a way to get a map to show just, I know there's trails back there. I just spoke to a person that called me with concerns. They had a lot to do with developing them, and they feel a lot of it's going to be destroyed. I would like to see just kind of a map so I could walk back there myself and see which existing trails will be impacted and what's remaining.
Yeah, I know what the architects, they were looking at, they could kind of delineate in some of the areas, some of the existing trail structures, but I think the best resource is to connect with the school and the ag department. Those teachers are the ones that really kind of lead and utilize that, environmental teachers as well, too.
They were also part of the discussion for the location choice.
Yes, back in 2020, when we first kind of made notice public of that potential site, they were part of that, and they did tours, and they walked with a group through the land and even the potential land. So
I'm going to adjourn until our 7:30 meeting in case people need to leave the room for a couple moments. It is 7:30. We will call our regular city council meeting to order. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All individuals are asked to either silence or turn off all cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices that may disrupt the meeting. Approval of the agenda. Approve the agenda as posted in accordance with the open meeting law, and herein place all agenda items on the table for discussion. A reminder, we are adding one item to our consent agenda under returning golf employees, and we need to remove item 9A. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knafa, second by Mayor Zilka. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes. Special work session meeting of March 7th, 2022, and the regular meeting of March 7th, 2022. Approve. What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Hanson. Any discussion?
Yes. Did you notice
closed the
that?
meeting, not me.
Yeah, it says that. Brad closed the meeting, but I actually closed it.
Thank you, we'll get that fixed.
And actually, I think there's one spot where it said I voted for something too. I don't remember which one it was. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Approval of the bills, checks 106387 through 106459, totaling $238,147.05. Approve. What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Mayor Zilka. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Awards, donations, presentations, and proclamations. Award, daycare funding, receive. John.
Thank you, Council President. As I just said in the work session, and proudly say again, we have been awarded in the federal appropriations bill $1.5 million to construct a child care facility to grow and retain child care slots in our community. This has been a long. Childcare as an issue has been something that I've been working on for a very long time with the support of the council as well. And this is going to go a long ways to helping it out childcare in our community. It will by no means solve our issues, but I do want to give a lot of thanks and gratitude to Representative Pete Stauber, Senator Tina Smith, Senator Amy Klobuchar. All three of them carried forth our project in legislation, have been doing so since probably August of last year. We even had Senator Smith in this room back in September to give her more information about the project and really support that. And it goes a big credit to the relationships that we built with that team, especially Representative Stauber, who kind of initiated this with us and brought it to our attention to make a funding request in this way. So when I get more details about that, I will be bringing them forward and discussing how the best our best approach to utilize this. But it is certainly something that our community will benefit from greatly.
Do we need action?
Not at this time, because I don't actually officially have the federal award yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, for taking that original phone call from Representative Stauber. Consent agenda. Advertise for seasonal employees, authorize. Appoint returning golf employees, approve. Community Advisory Board minutes, March 2022, receive. Fire report, February 2022, receive. Heritage Preservation Commission minutes, March 2022, receive. Housing and Redevelopment Authority minutes, February 2022, receive. Morrison County Attorney's Prosecution Report, January and February 2022, receive. Police Report, February 2022, receive. Recycling Report, February 2022, receive. Wastewater Report, February 2022, receive. And Water Report, 2022, receive. What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Lundberg. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Public hearings and lettings. Public hearing, Resolution 2022-23, ordering surface and/or utility improvements, 14th Street Southeast. Adopt. Great.
Thank you, Mr. President. Give me a second while I share my screen and get it up here. There we go. So this evening, as you heard in the work session, in regards to the housing study, this is kind of a offshoot from that, or in response to some of that. So we are looking at the 14th Street Southeast project. To give you an idea where the extension would be at, in the center of the screen, we see what we call Gideon's Farm. We would be extending that stretch basically about 650 feet to the south to allow for development of a new housing, multifamily housing on the east side of that complex. So we did get a request for a 49-unit apartment complex. The water main was stubbed out in 2009 as a 10-inch ductile iron. Sanitary sewer was stubbed out again in 2009 for 12-inch, and we'd be extending those portions to serve this new housing complex. A street view basically looking to the south. This would be an extension of that 14th Street Southeast roadway. We'd be looking at a 10-inch water main, 12-inch sanitary sewer. Sewer stubs served out to the property line with the water stubs stubbed out to the property as well. We would be required to do storm sewer improvements, which would entail a rural section with 1-foot shoulder ditches, as well as a stormwater pond for the road and the development. 27-inch subgrade correction, 5 inches of aggregate base with 3.5 inches of bituminous pavement. Looking at project cost, we're estimating construction to come in at $389,224, contingency at 10%, which is $38,922, engineering, legal, and administrative at $34,252, for a total project cost $462,398. We did speak with the developer. They would be looking at the 50-50 split for the assessments. So the assessments would come in at $231,199, and the city picking up the rest, which we own the other half of the parcel. So the parcel on the west side, which would then be responsible for that if that ever does develop. We do intend to sell general obligation bonds for this project, and it would most likely, if you look at the rest of the agenda, be combined with other projects to be combined as to one. Property owners who are disabled, meet income guidelines 65 years or older may apply for a deferment, as well as National Guard members that meet Minnesota Section 190.05. So we are looking at public hearing tonight, March 21st. We'd be looking at design in March, advertised for bids in April, with opening bids on April 14th. Construction would be in the fall of 2022 as well as the spring of 2023, with the special assessment hearing being in September or October of this year. With construction being completed in the spring of 2023, this would be combined with our other city projects, excluding 4th Street Southeast, but with the other ones to get the best bid price and timing that we could get for those projects. Questions on it?
Don't think so.
Greg?
Yep.
On the resolution on page 41, the 7th line says the project will be bid on or before October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And here you said April.
Yes. So we would bid it. In the resolution, we have a date in the future that it has to be bid before. And so
by then.
By then. So
Okay.
between now and then is when we have to have it bid. We usually do leave some flexibility in the event that we get bad bids, have to throw them out and rebid it or something like that. So we would still be within that October 1st timeframe.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
If there's no other questions, we'll open our public hearing part at 7:39. If anyone wishes to comment on this project.
Hi, my name is Cassie Frederigill. I live at 14969 Brittany Lane. So with the apartment complex, would there have to be a Section 8 available in an apartment complex?
I don't know that answer. Do you?
Does there have to be? No.
Is that going to be not included if that is built in Little Falls?
The project itself is designed as a market rate apartment complex. So that is generally rates at what we saw in the presentation earlier, around that $1,000 a month target number. There is a TIF district component to this project that was approved a year ago. As part of a requirement for TIF districts, they do have to provide 10% of the housing as affordable housing, but that is not, I don't know how they will specifically manage that.
So that would be equal opportunity then as Section 8?
Section 8 is different than affordable.
Yes. So they just
Low
have to,
income.
they just have to ensure that the rates meet the affordable housing rates for our market area based on the unit size for that. There will be 2 and 3 bedroom units, so that will be higher than your typical 1-bedroom affordable housing. But that's only 10% of the units. It's 49-unit complex, so we're looking at 5 units of that facility.
Right, so if we from what, what was it, $1.5 million grant for daycare? Is that correct? Or-
Childcare.
Childcare.
Yeah.
So like was that granted to like the city of Little Falls to invest into something like that then?
No, those.
They're different,
They're
right?
different projects.
Right, but I'm saying like, shouldn't we focus more on like doing something that we already have than trying to build this other thing right now?
I think there's a lot of needs in our community for a variety of different things, including childcare, as well as housing, as well as infrastructure and the community recreational complex that we've talked about too.
Right, so but if the complex is built close to other people who live obviously in Little Falls, then our taxes go up as well, correct?
That is the classifications of leads into property value increasing is generally comparable sales of property of like property. So if you have a single family residential home next to this apartment complex, I wouldn't expect unless your homes around you that are like your home, single family homes, their value and they were selling for higher, then that would raise the property values of your property. But the way taxes work is not just reflective of your property values. It's based on other factors that go into what is budgeted and approved ultimately by the city council. If property values increase by more than what our needs are for operating the city, then tax rates certainly can go down. And if that is a much broader separation, then you might not even see taxes increase at all.
Right, so I was just kind of getting at, like, we have this huge surplus that's been being talked about a lot. So if people are struggling to make their payments and construction prices are super high, wood costs a lot of money, all that kind of stuff, I see that if it was built, that people in the neighborhood still wouldn't be able to afford it. Like, I think it would be really damaging to Little Falls, and I think it would hurt all the people in the community at that point. That's just kind of my 2 cents.
Excuse me, could I have your name again, please?
Yes, Cassie Frederigill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to speak? If no one else would like to speak, we will close the public hearing at 7:44. What is the wish of the council?
I move to approve Resolution 2022-23, ordering surface and/or utility improvements on 14th Street Southeast.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Hanson. Any discussion?
Yeah, so I was just going to bring up one thing. By putting this in, is it going to set back any of our other projects that we kind of, has no effect on it, okay?
Resolution, call a roll, please.
Knopfler,
Yes.
Liljegren,
Yes.
Lundberg,
Yes.
Zilka,
Yes.
Hurkacz,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik,
Yes.
carries.
Lettings, workstations and wardrobes, K1 Administration, ratify and confirm. Lori.
Yes, thank you, Council President and members of the council. Tonight before you, we have a request to ratify and confirm the purchase of an office desk with our moving of the front counter to make it more accessible to the public and for staff for ease of use. And the addition of an employee, we do need another desk. So there is quite a lag time, if you will, to get the products and stuff. So we did go ahead and order the desk, wanting to ratify and confirm though the purchase. The desk and the wardrobe or the storage unit that will go with it was $7,064.72. It is off the state bid,
NASPO.
or the NASPO bid, I'm sorry.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Zilka, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Well 7 Rehabilitation, Thien Well Company, water.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did open up quotes for our well number 7 rehabilitation. We did budget $70,000 this year for rehabbing some of the wells around City Hall here in the water plant. As I mentioned, we got 2 quotes, one from Tyne Well in the amount of $41,800 and the second from Trout Companies in the amount of $40,000. Staff is recommending to go with Tyne Well Company out of Spicer, Minnesota. In the past, we've had excellent customer service from them, and so we are looking at recommending Tyne Well complete the well rehab for well number 7 for us.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to award.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion?
Mr. President, Greg, would you touch on why we rehabilitate wells?
So as, yes, Mr. Mayor. As the wells continue to produce, they draw water and the chemicals that are in them into the gravel pack around the well. As the iron and calcium builds up around that gravel, it reduces the amount of capacity or the amount of water that can flow into the well. So by rehabilitating them, you're able to remove some of that iron and some of that calcium, so that opens up the pores that the water flows through to our capacity. It makes the wells run a little bit more efficiently, as well as being able to get that amount of water out of there. If you let it go too long, then you won't be able to rehab the well or use the well, which means then you have to drill another well. So periodically, we do rehabilitate our wells to try to get rid of some of that calcium and some of that iron, so that it opens it back up to be able to get some more water into there.
Thank you.
Yep.
You don't do it like a point where you just shoot a .22 shell down and
We do not, no. No.
I have a
Just
question
kidding.
also. Greg, was well number 7 previously sealed?
Well number 7 was not sealed, no. We've sealed a number of them around, the annular space was sealed. So back in.
Explain what annular space is.
So they have an outer casing which they use to drill the well, and then there's an inner casing, which is the well itself. Between that inner casing and the outer casing, in the past, the construction method was basically just to leave it as material, soil,
Gravel?
not gravel, yeah. And one of the newer MPC, or not MPC, Department of Health requirements is to seal that component of it. That's the newer well construction style. In 2014, we started sealing a bunch of those annular spaces, as well as some of the unused wells around City Hall. And so that's where we talk about sealing the annular space. It's between the inner casing and the outer casing for those wells. So it's still operational. It still has been since it was drilled. It's just that outer portion of it is now sealed with grout, as opposed to just that gravel pack.
And that's a requirement for wellhead protection.
And that is, yeah, that's a requirement for wellhead protection.
Thanks for explaining
Yep.
that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Old business, housing study, Community Partners Research Incorporated, adopt. John.
Thank you, Council President. I won't belabor this much longer, since we got a very good presentation from Scott from the Community Partners Research group that did this study. It has already been in demand by a lot of folks. I've shared the draft versions with as well, in helping them to advocate and support the needs on their housing, both from potential developers to groups like Oasis that's working on homelessness issues, as well as Habitat for Humanity that does some home construction for those that need it.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Any discussion?
Just really quick, Mr. President, if I may, I just want to make sure we get the terminology. It's on the agenda to adopt. We would just be receiving this, right?
Accepting it, yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Resolution 2022-15, order in Public Improvement 397 Gale Drive reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, at one of our recent council meetings, we had public hearings for Gale Drive. We had 7 members present, 1 absent. Councilmember Knopfler was absent. We did have 1 no vote at that meeting as well, but because this is a project with less than 35% of the residents along there or property owners with accessible footage not petitioning for that, it needed 7/8 votes, so 7 votes in favor of it. So an absent vote is counted as a no vote. And so this evening, speaking with Councilmember Knopfler, he did agree to bring it forward to reconsider it. We are looking at extending sewer and water along Gale Drive. We do have, as you know, 1 house over there that did petition for it. They are actively building a house in that area and looking to use city sewer for that facility.
What is the wish of the council?
I have a question. Are we just voting to reconsider it, or are we actually voting on the project?
It would be voting, I believe, voting on the project.
It says reconsider, so.
Yeah, so Councilmember Knopfler would,
I brought it back to reconsider it.
yes,
Okay, so we're actually going to vote on the project again?
yes.
Okay.
And that's the option of a no vote, correct?
Correct. Only a no vote can bring it back.
Bring back something.
Yes.
Mr. President, we have an absent person again tonight. In all fairness, should we put this off and vote on it later to get a full council? Because otherwise, I mean, we can guess what that council member might want to vote, but maybe they have a change of heart, you know? So I'm just saying, if we're going to use this in one aspect to allow Mr. Knopfler to attend, shouldn't we do the same for Mr. Starley?
That would be a council decision. I just know we are getting late in terms of being able to build a project in 2022. You saw in the presentation that it is going to fall over into 2023 for construction, at least for 14th, and these would be all combined into one. But that would be a council decision.
I'm just afraid it makes it look like we're going to vote on it when we have our numbers. But we,
Well, in my mind, 1 no vote would not kill the project.
I
but
agree.
2 would. So if one other one, you know, we all would have the opportunity, whether the other council person was here or not, to vote no. And we didn't not vote because we were missing a council member. So I don't know why we would, because we're missing a council member.
like you said, it's up to the council. I'll go along with everybody else. I just thought I'd bring it up in case if it is an issue.
Yeah.
I think we should not put this off any longer. Do we need a motion to whether we're going to vote on it or not?
We do.
I move that we vote on it tonight.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Discussion.
Yes, Mr. President. The only thing I'd like to see us do a little different, I went out and looked at that neighborhood, and, I mean, we almost have to do this. The house is not, they didn't just break ground. It's...
The walls are up.
It's framed in. I think in the future, if we have an area that doesn't have utilities, we should look to put that building permit on hold and address the utility issue first to give us some flexibility. My concern here is, what if we get a petition on every remaining part of that neighborhood out there at the same time? we are simply not going to be able to afford to put utilities in every block out there at the same time just because somebody wants to build a house. We're going to have to decide if that happens, which neighborhoods go first and what's going to have to be put off by, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it may be. So I just think we got the order wrong on this one. The house is going up. They need
Would think
utilities.
they would ask for it before they started building.
Right, but presumably they had a building permit before the utilities issue was ironed out.
True.
Well, the point I would make is that it's within the city limits. They have, our job is to provide services for our residents.
I don't dispute that whatsoever, Mr. Mayor. What I'm saying is if we get too many at the same time, we are simply not going to be able to do all of them.
Yep, I understand that.
And, Mr. President, I just want to address the gentleman that was worried about the increase in prices from 2003 or whatever it was to what it is now. The same situation pretty much happened with me out in my area. Somebody came in, was building a house, all of a sudden it didn't work and da-da-da-da, and so he wanted to put in sewer and water. I was against it at that time. I thought, really? I'm going to be assessed this much and yada, yada, yada. I can't afford it, da-da-da-da. I got to do all this stuff. But I succumbed, and the sewer and the water went through. I did hook up, but I'm not using sewer and water yet, all right? When I do hook up, I will pay my assessments based on the price that they were 15 years ago at that time. So when these assessments go in with you guys right now, okay, even though you don't hook up, okay, your assessment is not going to grow. It's going to stay at what the price is right now this year, even though you don't hook up for 15 years from now or whatever. You would still pay the price that was at this moment in time.
State that during COVID, the rates have gone sky high, and it should have been
No provision for public comment.
This is not a public forum.
I mean, we had a member who requested it, and he was denied when the Riverwood stuff went in, and he's technically between Riverwood and Gale, and couldn't hook up at that point, and nobody sparked any red flags for Gale Drive. But we are.
Mr. President, I would like to point out that we've had a public hearing and we start our work session with public comment.
That's true. Any other discussion? Call.
We have to vote.
I have a question. So Raquel's motion was to have the council vote on,
Whether or not we're voting tonight.
okay?
Well, the agenda item is to adopt Resolution 2022-15, which is to order in the project.
It's to reconsider it.
Council,
Uh-oh.
Yes,
may I provide some guidance at this point?
please.
Thank you.
According to Robert's rules, a motion to reconsider is exactly that, it is a motion. And that motion must be made by a member who was on the, not necessarily the non-prevailing side in this case, but in this instance who voted no on it. So Councilmember Panopoulos would be eligible to make that motion. He would then make the motion, everyone would vote on it, whether or not to reconsider it, and then you would move on to the reconsideration of it. And that would have to pass by the special rules for a public improvement, but the motion to reconsider, which should be the first thing made, would be a simple majority.
Mr. President, with that being said, I make a motion to reconsider.
I have one question, please.
I'm sorry, we're past that time. We have a motion by Councilmember Knopfler.
Well, now I want to make sure we get this right. So does Raquel need to rescind her motion because she was a vote in the affirmative the first time? Because we have a motion and a second
And Alyssa has a comment.
on the table right now.
Council members, Council President, at this point, one of the interesting things about a motion to reconsider is that a motion to reconsider takes precedence over nearly everything else you can do. Therefore, by making the motion, we have stopped anything going on with Raquel's motion and have moved on to Councilmember Knopfler's. Councilmember Lumberg is set aside automatically for the moment. We've moved on to Councilmember Knopfler.
Well, I'll second Councilmember Knopfler's then.
So we have a resolution to reconsider, motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Discussion with that.
No, we don't have a resolution, we have a
But we
motion.
have, you're right. We have a.
Consider.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Now the resolution.
Now we're up to the resolution part.
Right.
So our previous motion is still there? Alyssa?
I believe Councilmember Lumberg's motion was to approve the resolution. Is that accurate?
No, not exactly. I will rescind my motion. Thank you. Now someone can make the real motion.
Why doesn't Jerry do that so we
I
can
will
just
do
keep
that.
this clean?
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-15, Order in Public Improvement 397 Gale Drive.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Liljegren to order in public improvement 397 Gale Drive. Discussion.
Mr. President, I know it may seem to some in the crowd that we're acting really lighthearted up there and that we really don't care. That definitely is not so. I know many of the people in the crowd, and we do this to try to better our community and do what is right. We don't do this to entertain ourselves, so it's never easy, but once again, we try to do what's best for the community. That's it.
I would like to add also that my street was done last summer, and I have a $17,000 assessment. I feel your pain, I do. But we can't say no to somebody who needs city water and sewer. It's our responsibility as a city to provide that for them.
Resolution, call a roll, please.
Liljegren,
Yes.
Lundberg,
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes?
Hurkak.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2022-24, approve plans and specifications and call for bids, public improvements 393 and 397. Adopt. Greg.
Mr. President, before you, we do have the plans and specs for public improvement number 393, 397. That includes 14th Street Southeast, Gale Drive, and Circle Drive. We were asking the council to approve those and authorize advertisements for bids so that we can get those out on the street and give contractors the opportunity to view them and get us pricing.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-24.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshik, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Discussion. Call a roll, please.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkak.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2022-25, large-scale street and sidewalk sale, Little Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, Arts and Crafts Fair. Adopt.
Good evening. I'm Mary Bednarik with the Little Falls Chamber of Commerce, and Deb Bowles, our CEO at the Chamber, with me here tonight. And we're looking for approval for our 49th Annual Little Falls Arts and Crafts Fair. I was wondering if anybody had any questions?
No, I think personally you do a pretty good job.
Thank you.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
No, I think it's good.
You gonna do something special next year when it's the 50th?
We're working on that yet. We got to get through this one first.
It's going to be my last. Or next one. 50th. Wow.
Thanks.
Any questions?
It's just great for the community, so thank you.
Thank you.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-25.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion? Call a roll, please.
Zilka?
Yes.
Hurkak?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gushik?
Yes.
Knappala?
Yes.
Liljegren?
Yes.
Lundberg?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 2022-26, large-scale street and sidewalk sale, West Side Improvement Association, Antiques and Collectibles.
Good evening. So I'm Deb Redko with the West Side Improvement Association, and I'm here along with Rosie LeBlanc and Brad Jensen, who are also co-chairs for our event. And we are here to obtain our license for this year's event. And it's, believe it or not, 20 years. It's like, where did that go?
Yeah, I'll say.
Any questions for anybody?
No, once again, just thank you for doing that. It's always a great experience to experience that.
It is, it is.
What is the wish of the council?
Council President, I move to adopt Resolution 2022-26.
I'll second.
Large-scale street and sidewalk sale, West Side Improvement Association.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Knappala. Any discussion? Call a roll, please.
Hurkak?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gushik?
Yes.
Knappala?
Yes.
Liljegren?
Yes.
Lundberg?
Yes.
Zilka?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you.
Good to
Thank you.
go.
Lake Shirts public hearing. Public hearing for the Minnesota Investment Fund application.
Yes, Lake Shirts is a company out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, that is looking to relocate here to Little Falls. As a part of that relocation, they are requesting some assistance through the Minnesota Investment Fund. So we are requesting the council call for a public hearing on the Minnesota Investment Fund grant loan to Lake Shirts. That public hearing would be held April 18th. 7:30 here in the council chambers.
So to call for that, we're just doing resolution, the next one?
Actually, no, two
It's two
different
parts?
things. So the
Okay.
Minnesota Investment Fund just requires us to call for the public hearing. The resolution is for business
I
subsidy.
see that. What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to call a public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion? I heard her voice a little before yours. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Resolution 2022-27, call for business subsidy, public hearing, adopt.
Yes, with the public hearing for the MIF, the Minnesota Investment Fund application, we are also required to do a business subsidy public hearing, as the subsidy would be over $150,000. So the resolution is, again, calling for a public hearing for the business subsidy portion, again, on April 18th here in the council chambers.
What is the wish of the council?
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-27, call for business subsidy public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knappala, second by Councilmember Hanson. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkacz.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2022-28, authorization to submit grant, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, Outdoor Recreation Grant, Pine Tree Park, adopt. John.
Thank you, Council President. This would be an application to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for their outdoor recreation grant program. This is a project to replace the playground equipment at the Pine Tree Playground. And this has been requested from the Kiwanis Club through the Park Board, that the Kiwanis would again come back and help support by covering the cost of the playground equipment. So that would be an additional funding partner. But with everything, the costs are going up on a lot of projects like this. In addition to that request, what the Kiwanis is interested in promoting is a playground equipment that is highly accessible, and helping develop that area with highly accessible playground equipment, as well as access from the various street and parking areas, off-street parking areas to that playground. So with that, I think that strengthens the grant application. It is a competitive grant fund, but there's been a lot of discussion that seeing projects like this are definitely more inclined to be supported and funded. There is a requirement for a 50% match to this, and projects cannot, I think, exceed $150,000 of state funding. So there's certain limitations to that, but the grant request, likely what we're seeing in terms of overall costs, I'm still waiting for a final number, but with equipment and surface and improvements to that, we're looking at a project that's around $150,000 at its highest. So the grant award would be a request for $75,000.
That cost includes, that's just the equipment, or does that include
That's everything.
like
That's
the
site
sidewalks
improvements, that's site improvements and equipment.
What is the wish of the council?
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-28, authorization to submit grant, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources.
Second.
She was first.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yeah.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkacz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Carries.
City council reports on city authorities, boards, bureaus, commissions, and committees. Anyone have anything?
Mr. President, I passed out for council members regarding the Fishing with the Pros at Rice Creek, April 22nd. And it's a fundraiser for the Minnesota Fishing Museum here in Little Falls. And I know that there's been a lot of work to try to keep it here. And so I'd like to see us participate to help them out at this event. That's all.
Participate how? By fishing?
Buying a ticket.
Oh, buying a ticket, okay.
Anyone else? Any announcements? We will adjourn at 8:15.